AITA for reading my grandma's notarized letter after my mom humiliated me at her vow renewal? I'm Bella, 34, and I'm Linda's oldest daughter. In my family, responsible has always meant available for anything and allowed to complain about nothing. My biological father died when I was 9. For a few years after that, my mother and I were close in the way people become close when they are both trying to survive the same loss. Then she married Raymond when I was 13, and our relationship slowly changed. Raymond never hit me or screamed at me. He did something harder to explain. He treated me like an inconvenient adult who happened to be shaped like a kid. If I was sad, I was dramatic. If I needed help, I was old enough to handle it. If I handled something well, that was simply what was expected. By the time Jason was born, I had already learned how to pack my own lunch, sign school forms my mother forgot, clean the kitchen after dinner and tell people, "It's fine," before they had even asked. Jason was 6 years younger than me, and from the beginning, he was treated like proof that my mother's second marriage had fixed everything. He was the funny one, the sensitive one, the one who just needed more time. Every mistake he made came with a soft explanation. He forgot Mother's Day. He had been stressed. He missed Ruth's birthday dinner. His car was acting up. He borrowed money and didn't repay it. He was trying to get on his feet. I once forgot to pick up a bakery order because I was sitting with my grandmother at an urgent care clinic, and Raymond told me I had a pattern of making everything about myself. That sentence followed me for years. My grandmother Ruth was my mother's mother. She was quiet, observant, and not easily impressed by performance. She kept paper bank statements in a small accordion file, wrote appointment times on a wall calendar, and carried the same zippered coin purse for at least 20 years. She was also the one person in the family who seemed to notice the difference between helping and being useful. When I was 22, she watched me clear plates after a family dinner while Jason sat on the couch laughing at something on his phone. "You know you can sit down too," she said. My mother answered for me. "Bella likes to stay busy." I remember Ruth looking at me for a second longer than necessary. "No," she said. "Bella likes things to get done." At the time I took that as a compliment. Later I understood it was a warning. The financial problems started small enough that I didn't recognize them as a pattern. My mother would call and say Ruth needed a prescription picked up. I would pay the pharmacy copay because Mom had left her wallet at home. Then it was $80 for a plumber to replace a valve under Ruth's kitchen sink. Then $140 for an appointment that hadn't been fully covered. Then $300 for a bathroom safety rail because Ruth had slipped getting out of the shower. Each request came wrapped in urgency and followed by a promise. "I'll pay you Friday. Raymond will send it when he gets home. Jason owes me, so when he pays me back, I'll reimburse you." I almost never got reimbursed. When I asked, my mother acted hurt. "Do we really have to keep score?" So I stopped asking. I didn't stop keeping records. For years, I kept receipts in a white envelope in my kitchen drawer. Pharmacy slips, repair invoices, printed confirmations from Zelle, notes I had written to myself after phone calls. I told myself I was organizing things for taxes or in case Ruth needed proof of expenses. The truth was less flattering. Some part of me already knew my family's memory changed depending on who needed to look innocent. Jason started asking me for money directly when he was around 23. The first time he needed $600 because his rent was short. He promised to repay me in 2 weeks. "You know I'm good for it," he said. I transferred the money. 3 weeks later I asked about it. He told me he had been hit with another expense. A month after that my mother called. "Can you stop pressuring him? He's embarrassed." I asked one question. "He told me you made him feel like a criminal." He borrowed $600 and stopped answering me. "You have savings, Bella." He doesn't. That became the family's favorite form of arithmetic. If I had something, then losing part of it didn't count. If Jason wanted something, then not giving it to him was cruelty. I stopped lending him money after the third unpaid loan. That didn't stop my mother from using me as the backup payer. She would text things like, "Please cover it this time. I can't let people know Jason messed up again." Or, "Don't mention this to Raymond. He's already angry." The strange part was that Raymond always seemed to know. He would call after I had paid something and say, "Good. Glad you handled it." When I asked whether I would be reimbursed, he would sigh. "You've always been dramatic about money." I began saying no more often in my late 20s. Not loudly. Not in a way that gave anyone a scene to point at. I just stopped fixing everything immediately. That was when my mother's public version of me began to change. At family gatherings, she would say I was very independent, with a little laugh that made it sound like a character defect. She told Tara, my cousin, that I rarely checked on Ruth. She told Uncle Glenn that I only came around when I wanted something. She told one of my aunts that I had become cold after doing well for myself, though she never explained what I had supposedly done so well at, or what I had taken from anyone. I heard pieces of it through other people, but I didn't confront her. I thought correcting her would embarrass her. I thought it would put Ruth in the middle. I thought silence made me mature. It only made the lie easier to repeat. About 8 months before the vow renewal, Ruth's water heater stopped working. My mother called me at 6:40 a.m. "She can't be without hot water," she said. "Can you pay the service company and I'll transfer it back?" The bill was just over $900. I paid it. That afternoon, I received a Zelle payment from my mother for $300 with the note, "Ruth repair partial." The rest never came. 2 weeks later, Jason posted pictures from a weekend trip. I didn't comment. I didn't ask questions. I simply added the invoice and payment confirmation to the envelope in my drawer. A month after that, Ruth needed a roof patch over the back room. Water had started staining the ceiling after a storm. The estimate was $1,200. This time I told my mother I would pay the contractor directly but needed to know how much was already in Ruth's home repair fund. There was a pause. "What do you mean? You told me Grandma had money set aside for repairs." "She does." "Then why am I paying all of it?" "Because the account is tied up." "In what?" "Bella, I'm dealing with a lot. Can you please not interrogate me?" I didn't pay the full bill. I paid the deposit so the leak could be stopped, then told her I needed documentation before I covered anything else. That was the first time Raymond called me a leech. Not to my face. He said it to Glenn, who later repeated it to me with the tone people use when they think they are doing you a favor. "Raymond feels like you only help when you can control things," Glenn said. "I paid the deposit." "I know. I paid for the water heater." "I know. I've paid for years of prescriptions and copays." He rubbed his forehead. "I'm not taking sides. I'm just telling you why they're frustrated." That sentence made me laugh, although nothing was funny. Not taking sides usually meant someone had already accepted my mother's version and was giving me a chance to surrender peacefully. The situation might have continued like that if Ruth hadn't called me on a Tuesday afternoon and asked whether banks sometimes moved money without telling customers. Her voice was calm, but I could hear paper shifting near the phone. "What happened?" I asked. "I got a notice about a transfer limit. I don't remember making transfers." "How much?" "That's what I'm trying to understand." I went to see her that evening. Ruth had her accordion file open on the kitchen table. The plastic tabs were labeled in her careful handwriting. Bank, house, medical, insurance. She had laid out 6 months of statements in neat rows. She pointed to 3 withdrawals and 2 electronic transfers. The first was $800. The second was $1,000. The third was $450. One transfer had a note that read bathroom repair. The bathroom rail had cost $300 and I had paid for it. The other said care help, even though the woman who came twice a week to help Ruth had been paid by check, directly from Ruth's account for the same period. "Did Mom make these transfers for you?" I asked. "She has access for bills," Ruth said. "Or she did. Raymond helped set it up." "Do you recognize the destination?" "No." I took pictures of the statements and asked Ruth to call the bank with me the next morning. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't want to frighten her or make a claim I couldn't prove. But once I started comparing dates, the pattern appeared almost immediately. The $800 withdrawal happened 2 days before Jason called my mother about being behind on his car payment. The $1,000 transfer happened the same week Jason told me he had to put down a deposit for a new apartment. The $450 withdrawal happened after he damaged his phone and needed a replacement. I searched old messages and found my mother's requests from those same weeks. Can you cover Ruth's pharmacy and appointment Friday? Her account is low. Please pay the repair deposit. I'll explain later. Don't make this a thing. Jason is already embarrassed. That last message had been sent 3 hours after the $1,000 transfer left Ruth's account. I felt cold while sitting at my own kitchen table. The problem wasn't only that money had gone missing. My mother had taken money from Ruth's funds to rescue Jason, then asked me to replace it. Afterward, she had told relatives I refused to help my grandmother. I printed everything. I made a timeline with dates, amounts, and what I had paid. I matched pharmacy receipts to bank activity. I matched repair invoices to my Zelle records. I found Venmo screenshots from Jason showing transfers from my mother with notes like Jason short and car emergency. Then I found a voicemail from Raymond that I had saved without thinking much about it. It was from the week of the roof repair. His voice was low and irritated. Bella, your mother told me you're holding up the contractor. Jason made a mistake, okay? You're steadier than he is, so just front it for now and we'll sort it out. Don't turn this into some moral crusade. Played it twice. He knew. He had known enough to call it Jason's mistake, and he had still allowed my mother to tell everyone I was refusing to help Ruth. I called my mother the next day. I kept my voice neutral. Who received the transfers from Grandma's account? What transfers? The ones for $800, $1,000, and $450. There was a long silence. Then she said, "Why are you going through her private information?" She asked me to. Ruth gets confused. She is not confused about money leaving her account. Jason borrowed some. He needed help. Did Grandma agree? He was going to put it back. That isn't what I asked. My mother's tone sharpened. You always do this. You take a family problem and make it ugly. Did Grandma agree? He is her grandson. I'm her grandchild too. You don't need what he needs. I wrote that sentence down after the call. Not because I thought anyone would believe it mattered, but because I was tired of letting their words disappear once they became inconvenient. The next several days were quiet. That usually meant my mother and Raymond were deciding which version of events would protect them best. Ruth was sadder than angry. She sat at her kitchen table with both hands around a mug she had forgotten to drink from. I gave Linda access because I thought it would make things easier, she said. You trusted her. I still love her. I know. Those are not the same thing, are they? No. Ruth asked me to help her meet with the person who handled her legal documents. She didn't want a dramatic family meeting. She wanted her bills paid, her home protected, and no more unexplained transfers. Over the next 2 weeks, she revoked the existing financial authorization that had allowed my mother to act for her. She named me as the person authorized to handle specific care and financial matters if needed. She also asked for account alerts, lower transfer limits, and written confirmation before large payments. The originals stayed with Ruth and her attorney. I kept copies. Ruth also wrote a statement in plain language. It wasn't theatrical. It didn't call anyone a thief. That wouldn't have sounded like her. It said that I had regularly paid medical copays, repair costs, transportation expenses, and support costs when other family members failed to do so. It said she had reviewed the records herself. It said money had been moved from her accounts without her informed approval and used for Jason's expenses. It said my mother and Raymond were no longer authorized to access or direct those funds. The final paragraph said, Bella showed up when nobody was clapping for it. I trust her because she tells me the truth, including when the truth makes our family uncomfortable. Ruth signed it in front of a notary. When the papers were complete, she put copies in a manila envelope and slid it across the table to me. Your mother is going to say you forced me, she said. I know. She may say you're doing this for money. I know. You aren't. I know that too. She patted my hand. I need you to remember it when they get loud. The vow renewal invitation had been stuck to my refrigerator for nearly 2 months by then. It was cream-colored with gold script and a photograph of my mother and Raymond smiling in matching blue shirts. 25 years of choosing each other, it said. The dinner would be in their backyard. There would be rented chairs, catering, a slideshow, speeches, and a photographer. My mother had talked about it for a year. The timing was terrible. That was why I planned to say nothing at the party. Ruth didn't feel well enough to attend, and she didn't want the evening turned into a fight. I agreed to bring the envelope and give it to my mother privately after dinner. Inside were copies of the notarized statement, the revocation notice, 3 pages of transfer records, selected receipts, screenshots of my mother's messages, and a typed transcript of Raymond's voicemail. I also included a short cover note. I am giving you copies so there is no confusion about why Ruth changed her authorization. The originals are secure. Future communication regarding Ruth's finances must be in writing. That was all. I didn't bring every receipt. I didn't prepare a slideshow of my own. I didn't want to put my family on trial between the sheet cake and champagne toast. I wanted them to understand that the old arrangement was over. When I arrived, the backyard looked like a wedding assembled from rentals and determination. White folding chairs were lined in rows near an arch covered in artificial flowers. Plastic champagne flutes sat beside tubs of ice. Catered trays of chicken, pasta, roasted vegetables, and dinner rolls filled 2 long tables under the patio cover. A grocery store sheet cake waited inside the kitchen with gold icing that said, "Still yes." My mother wore a pale blue dress. Raymond wore a gray suit that was too warm for the weather but made him stand straighter. Jason arrived late in a wrinkled button-down and immediately became the center of 3 conversations. My mother hugged him with both arms. "There's my handsome boy." When she saw me, she looked at the envelope under my arm. "What's that?" "Something for you and Raymond. I'd rather give it to you privately later." Her smile changed. "Is it about Ruth?" "Yes." "Not tonight." "I agree." I placed it beside my plate. For the first hour, I tried to be a normal guest. I helped move a tray when the caterer needed space. I took a picture of Tara and her husband. I brought Glenn a clean fork after his fell under the table. I complimented my mother's dress. She accepted everything with a tight smile. The ceremony itself was short. My mother and Raymond stood beneath the artificial flowers and repeated vows about loyalty, endurance, and protecting one another through hardship. That last part landed differently for me than it did for everyone else. Afterward, we moved to the tables for dinner. The slideshow began on a screen hung against the side of the house. It showed my mother and Raymond on vacations at holiday dinners, holding Jason as a baby, cheering at his school events, and posing beside him at various milestones. There were a few pictures of me as a teenager, mostly at the edge of the frame. There were none of me sitting beside Ruth in waiting rooms. None of me bringing groceries into her kitchen. None of the bathroom rail I had paid for, the roof patch I had arranged, or the birthday dinners I had organized after Jason forgot. Of course there weren't. Those weren't photo moments. They were tasks. Near the end, a picture appeared of Jason handing my mother flowers at her 60th birthday. He had texted me from the grocery store that afternoon asking which bouquet to buy. I had sent him the money because his card was declined. Everyone laughed when my mother said, "He always remembers his mama." I looked down at my plate. Tara, sitting 2 seats away, glanced at me. My phone buzzed a few seconds later. "Are you okay?" I typed, "Fine," then deleted it. I wrote, "I'm staying quiet." She replied, "Good. Linda is nervous about Ruth. Please don't upset her tonight." That told me my mother had already been talking. After dinner, Glenn made a speech about commitment. A cousin talked about how Raymond had held the family together. Jason stood with a champagne flute and said he hoped to have a marriage as strong as theirs someday. My mother cried. Then she took the microphone. She thanked the caterer, the relatives who traveled, Tara for arranging flowers, Glenn for helping with the chairs, and Jason for being our rock these past few months. I waited for my name, although I knew better. She didn't say it. That should have been the end of it. I could have let the omission pass. I had done it 100 times. But my mother looked directly at me. "And family is not only about showing up when there's a party," she said. "It's about gratitude. It's about remembering who sacrificed for you." The room changed. Not dramatically. No music stopped. No one gasped. People simply became very interested in their plates. My mother continued. "I think sometimes the people we give the most to are the quickest to forget. Since we're all being honest tonight, maybe Bella can finally say what she should have said years ago. I stared at her. What would that be? She gave a small laugh like I was proving her point. Thank you would be a start. An apology would be better. Raymond leaned back in his chair. There you go, he said. Stand up and speak from the heart. I didn't move. For what? My mother's eyes filled immediately. She could cry with remarkable speed when an audience was available. For treating us like we're only useful when you need something. For ignoring your grandmother unless someone asks you to help. For acting like this family has done nothing for you. The accusation was so upside down that I almost smiled. Around us, forks stopped moving. Jason stared at the table. He didn't look surprised. That mattered. This hadn't been spontaneous. My mother had decided before dinner that she would use her vow renewal to put me in my place. Raymond knew. Jason knew enough to keep his head down. Maybe they believed humiliating me first would make anything I said afterward look like revenge. Tara texted again. Why are you doing this tonight? I turned the phone face down. Glenn leaned toward me and spoke quietly. Bella, not tonight. Just say you're sorry she feels hurt and let the evening continue. I looked at him. She asked me to apologize for not helping Ruth. I know. We can sort it out later. No. You heard her say it now. He lowered his voice further. Don't ruin the party. That was the moment I understood that everyone at the table had been invited to judge me, but I was expected to defend myself in private. My mother could accuse me with a microphone. I was supposed to answer in a hallway. I still might have done it. I might have picked up the envelope and left. Then Raymond reached across the table and tapped it with one finger. What is this supposed to be anyway? I told Linda I'd give it to you privately. He laughed. Let's hope that envelope isn't your big contribution. A few people shifted in their chairs. My mother said, Raymond. But her tone wasn't a warning. It was encouragement disguised as embarrassment. He tapped the envelope again. Whatever's in there is probably as cheap as her concern. Jason smirked before catching himself. I looked at him, then at my mother. Do you want me to leave? Raymond answered. If you can't respect your mother on this night, yes. I pulled my chair closer to the table instead. My hands were steady. I was going to give this to you privately, I said. You made it public. My mother's face changed. Bella, don't. I opened the envelope. There were maybe 30 people in the backyard. I didn't pass documents to all of them. I didn't stand and perform. I pulled out the notarized statement and placed the other pages in 3 small stacks in front of me. Since everyone here is being asked to judge what kind of daughter I am, I said, you should know what I've actually been carrying. Raymond scoffed. Here we go. I read only the first part. I, Ruth, make this statement voluntarily and with full understanding. Bella has regularly paid expenses for my medical care, home repairs, transportation, and support when others failed to do so. I have personally reviewed records confirming these payments. My mother stood. Stop this. I kept reading. I recently learned that funds were removed or redirected from my accounts without my informed approval and used for Jason's personal expenses. Someone near the end of the table whispered, What? Jason pushed his chair back. That is not what happened. I placed the letter down. Then explained the transfers. I don't have to explain my finances to you. They weren't your finances. My mother reached for the paper. I moved it out of reach. These are copies, I said. The originals are secure. Her eyes snapped to mine. Secure where? With Ruth's attorney. That was the first moment Raymond stopped looking amused. I put the transfer page on top. $800 left Ruth's account 2 days before Jason's overdue car payment was covered. $1,000 left the week of his apartment deposit. $450 left after he broke his phone. During those same weeks, Mom asked me to pay Ruth's pharmacy appointment water heater and roof expenses because she said Ruth's account was low. Jason shook his head. You're twisting it. I slid over the screenshots. These are Mom's messages. Tara picked up the top page before my mother could stop her. She read silently, then aloud. Please cover it this time. I can't let people know Jason messed up again. My mother's voice rose. That was private. Tara looked at her. Is it fake? That is not the point. It is exactly the point, I said. Raymond stood too. You've always been dramatic about money. You paid a few bills and now you want a parade. I pulled out the payment summary. Over 6 years, I paid just under $19,000 toward Ruth's care, repairs, transportation, and expenses Mom said would be reimbursed. That doesn't include my time. It doesn't include groceries. It doesn't include the money Jason borrowed directly and never repaid. I hadn't planned to say the total. Seeing it on the page made me feel embarrassed, not proud. $19,000 wasn't a fortune spread over 6 years, but it was enough to prove that a few bills was another lie. My mother began crying harder. After everything I sacrificed, this is how you repay me? I'm not asking you to repay me tonight. You're humiliating your own mother. You asked me to apologize for not helping Grandma in front of everyone. You could have spoken to me privately. I did. You said Jason borrowed the money because he needed it more. That brought a fresh silence. Glenn looked at Raymond. Did Jason take money from Ruth? Raymond folded his arms. This is a family matter. Glenn's voice hardened. No. She answered. Now you answer. Raymond looked toward my mother. That silence did more damage than any document I had brought. Jason stood abruptly. I was going to put it back. Several people spoke at once. My mother turned on him. Jason. What? I was. She's acting like I robbed Grandma. I borrowed it. I looked at him. Did Grandma know? He dragged a hand through his hair. Mom said it would be fine. My mother closed her eyes. Tara put the screenshot down. Linda, why have you been telling people Bella refuses to help Ruth? I never said that. You told me last month that Bella only shows up when she wants control. That is not the same thing. You told me she wouldn't pay for the roof. I said she made it difficult. I paid the deposit, I said. You had already moved money out of Ruth's repair fund. My mother pointed at me. You're enjoying this. I was not. My stomach hurt. My face felt hot. I could hear the plastic champagne flutes tipping as people shifted around the table. But I also knew what she was doing. If she could make the issue my tone, my timing, or my supposed pleasure, then no one would have to stay focused on what had happened to Ruth. No, I said. I'm ending it. I took out the revocation notice. This confirms that Mom and Raymond no longer have authority to access or direct Ruth's accounts. Future expenses go through me in writing. Ruth has also added bank alerts and transfer restrictions. Raymond's face went pale. You manipulated an old woman. She met with her attorney without you. You drove her there. Yes. That proves it. No. It proves she needed a ride. He looked around the table for support and found fewer eyes than he expected. Then he said something that revealed more than he intended. What about the house arrangement? I had wondered when that would come up. For months, my mother and Raymond had been telling relatives that Ruth would eventually sell her house and move into a finished suite in their home. They described it as a loving family plan. What they didn't say was that they expected money from the sale to pay for the renovation, clear part of their mortgage, and create what Raymond called a cushion for everybody. Ruth had never agreed to that. She had told me she wanted to remain in her home as long as she safely could. There is no house arrangement, I said. My mother stopped crying for half a second. Ruth cannot stay alone forever. That decision belongs to Ruth and the people she formally authorizes. We were going to take care of her. You were going to use her money to renovate your house. It would have been for her. Then why did she learn about the plan from Tara? Tara turned toward my mother. You told me Ruth had agreed. She had discussed it. No, I said. You discussed it around her until you started calling it an agreement. Raymond jabbed a finger toward the papers. You have no right to interfere with our retirement planning. There it was. Not Ruth's care. Their retirement planning. Glenn sat back slowly. Raymond, he said, you might want to stop talking. My mother looked as if he had slapped her. The catered food sat cooling on the tables. Someone's child had wandered inside. The slideshow continued silently behind us, cycling through smiling family photographs that now looked like evidence of a different kind. I pulled out the final page. Ruth's attorney has the full set of documents. Jason has 30 days to sign a repayment agreement and begin making payments. If he refuses, Ruth will decide with her attorney how to proceed. Jason stared at me. You're threatening me? No. I'm telling you what Grandma decided. She wouldn't do that. She signed it. You made her. She asked you for 6 months to explain the missing money. You avoided her calls. His mouth opened then closed. My mother whispered, "Please don't do this to me." I looked at her. You did it when you called me a leech in front of everyone. I never used that word. Raymond did. You repeated it to Tara. Tara's expression confirmed it before my mother could deny it. I continued because I knew if I stopped, the room would fill with tears, excuses, and demands that I comfort the people who had caused the harm. I am not asking anyone here to take my side. I am asking you to stop repeating things about me that are not true. I didn't abandon Ruth. I didn't refuse to help her. I didn't take from this family. I paid to cover money that was moved without her permission. And then I stayed quiet while Mom and Raymond used that silence to protect Jason. My voice shook on the last sentence, which irritated me. I wanted to be calm enough that no one could call me emotional. Then Ruth's words came back to me. Remember it when they get loud. Being hurt didn't make me wrong. I placed the final copy of her letter on the table. The last paragraph was visible. Bella showed up when nobody was clapping for it. My mother sat down. For the first time that evening, no one rushed to comfort her. Not because they had stopped loving her. Because love had finally been forced to share space with facts. Tara asked to photograph the pages. I said no. These are Ruth's private records. I brought enough to correct what was said here. I'm not putting her finances into circulation. That mattered to me. I wasn't interested in replacing my mother's gossip with my own. Glenn read the voicemail transcript. You said this, he asked Raymond. Raymond glanced at it. That's out of context. What context makes Jason made a mistake so Bella should front it better? I was trying to keep peace. I almost laughed again. Peace in my family had always meant that the least explosive person absorbed the damage. Jason walked away from the table and stood near the fence with his phone in his hand. My mother followed him after a minute. They spoke in low, urgent voices. Raymond remained at the table, staring at the papers as if he could intimidate them into changing. The photographer quietly packed one of his lenses. Nobody cut the cake. A few relatives left without saying goodbye. Others lingered in small groups, whispering. One aunt hugged me and said, "I had no idea." Another avoided my eyes entirely. Tara came over while I was putting the copies back in the envelope. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" "For texting you like you were the problem. Linda told me you were trying to take over Ruth's money. I'm authorized to protect it. That is not the same as owning it." "I know that now." She looked toward my mother. "I should have asked you." "Yes," I said. It wasn't a warm answer, but it was honest. Glenn approached next. "That was brutal," he said. "The accusation was public." "I know. You told me to apologize. I was trying to stop the night from blowing up. It was already blown up. You just wanted me to stand inside it quietly." He looked down. "That's fair." I waited. He sighed. "You were treated unfairly." It wasn't a complete apology, but it was more than Glenn had ever said before. Raymond came over as I was picking up my bag. "You need to leave." I was already going. "You have damaged your mother in a way you don't understand." I looked at him. She built a celebration around loyalty, while the two of you were hiding what happened to Grandma's money. Jason made a mistake. You both made choices after his mistake. That's the part you keep skipping. You think papers make you powerful? No. They make it harder for you to lie about me. His jaw tightened. What's copy number 2? He had noticed the small notation at the bottom of my cover page. Copy 1, Linda and Raymond. Copy 2, Ruth's attorney and bank review file. It's the supporting set Ruth authorized for her attorney and the bank's review team if Jason refuses the repayment agreement or if anyone challenges her revocation. You don't send that. It's already prepared. You will destroy his future. No. I will follow Grandma's instructions. I left before he could answer. The next morning I woke to 31 missed calls. Most were from my mother. 6 were from Raymond. 4 were from Jason. The rest came from relatives who had apparently spent the night discussing the vow renewal after I left. There were 12 voicemails. My mother moved between sobbing and anger. How could you do that in front of everyone? You have no idea what I've been through with Jason. Ruth is confused and you know it. You ruined the happiest night I've had in years. Raymond left 3 messages about dignity. Your mother deserved dignity. You need to bring those documents back. Do not send anything else until we sit down as a family. Jason texted instead. You made my life worse over one mistake. Then, I said I would pay it back. Then, you're acting like you never needed help. That last one almost pulled me into an argument. I typed several responses and deleted them. Eventually I sent one message to all 3 of them separately. I didn't destroy the family. I stopped paying to protect the lie. From now on, anything about Ruth goes in writing. I will not send money, cover missing funds, or discuss her finances by phone. Do not use her to pressure me. Do not tell relatives I abandoned her. View continue. I will provide the relevant proof to the person you misled. My mother called immediately. I didn't answer. Raymond called after her. I didn't answer. Jason wrote, so that's it? You're cutting everyone off. I replied, I'm cutting off money and dishonesty. What remains is up to you. Then I muted all 3. That afternoon I went to see Ruth. She was sitting at her kitchen table, the accordion file closed beside her. Tara had already called her, which annoyed me until Ruth said Tara had only asked whether she was all right. Did you read it? Ruth asked. Yes. All of it. Enough. She studied my face. Your mother cried. Yes. Raymond got angry. Yes. Jason said he borrowed it. Yes. She nodded once. That sounds like them. I sat across from her. I'm sorry it happened at the party. I'm sorry they thought a party made the truth impolite. That was the closest Ruth came to sounding sharp. Then she reached across the table. You didn't make them take the money. I know. You didn't make Linda lie. I know. You didn't make Raymond mock you. I know. Do you? I looked at her hand over mine. I'm trying to. Ruth's attorney sent the repayment agreement to Jason 3 days later. It listed the amount supported by the records we had, set a manageable monthly payment, and required him to acknowledge that the money belonged to Ruth. Jason refused at first. He sent me messages saying he couldn't afford the proposed amount, though it was less than he spent on takeout and weekend trips. He said signing would make him look guilty. You admitted it in front of 30 people, I replied. The agreement does not create the facts. My mother offered to pay part of it for him, which would have continued the same pattern. Ruth refused. He needs to sign his own name, she said. For once, my mother couldn't override her. The bank review found additional small transfers we had missed. Nothing life-changing on its own. $100 here. $200 there. The kind of amounts people assume will disappear into routine expenses. Together, they added more than $3,000 to what Jason owed. The review also showed that my mother had used Ruth's account twice to reimburse herself for caregiving on days when I had taken Ruth to appointments and paid the expenses. When I asked my mother for an explanation in writing, she replied, I was under enormous pressure. That wasn't an explanation, so I didn't answer. The proposed basement plan died quickly. Without Ruth's sale proceeds or access to her funds, my mother and Raymond couldn't afford the renovation they had already been discussing with a contractor. Raymond had apparently counted on paying down a chunk of their mortgage after Ruth moved in. He called Glenn and told him I had sabotaged their retirement. Glenn surprised me by saying, You cannot retire on someone else's house without their agreement. Raymond stopped speaking to him for several weeks. Jason signed the repayment agreement on day 27. He didn't apologize. He signed because his attorney told him a written family repayment was better than forcing Ruth to decide whether to pursue a more formal claim. He began sending payments directly into a protected account. The first one arrived with no note. The second said, Hope you're happy. I forwarded the payment confirmation to Ruth and ignored the comment. My mother's story changed as the weeks passed. First, I had fabricated everything. Then I had manipulated Ruth. Then the transfers had been harmless family borrowing. Then everyone had known about them. Then the real problem wasn't the money but the way I had ambushed her. That last version gained the most support. A few relatives told me I had been right about the facts but wrong about the setting. One cousin said I should have taken my mother aside, even after I reminded him that I had arrived planning to do exactly that. You could have walked away, he said. So could she. He didn't have an answer. I didn't expect everyone to approve of me. Approval was the currency that had kept me useful for too long. What changed most was my daily life. The calls stopped coming because I stopped answering urgency with money. When my mother texted, "Ruth needs groceries," I asked for the list and arranged delivery from Ruth's account with her approval. When Raymond wrote, "The back steps need work," I requested an estimate and sent it to Ruth and her attorney before authorizing anything. When Jason asked me to lend him $200, just until Friday, I replied, "No." No explanation. No apology. No paragraph about how much I cared. Just no. The first few times felt cruel. Then I noticed that every emergency found another solution when I was no longer automatically available. My mother and I didn't reconcile. We had one brief conversation about 3 months after the vow renewal. She asked to meet at Ruth's house. I agreed because Ruth wanted us to discuss an upcoming medical appointment. My mother arrived with a folder and red eyes. For 20 minutes we handled the appointment details. Transportation, paperwork, medication list, payment. Then she closed the folder. "Are you ever going to apologize? For correcting you? For doing it that way? You put me on the spot. You gave a speech saying I abandoned Grandma. You could have protected me." I looked at her. "That is what I did for years." She flinched. I continued before she could interrupt. "I protected you when you asked me to cover money Jason took. I protected you when you told relatives I wouldn't help. I protected you when Raymond called me selfish after I paid bills you promised to repay. Every time I stayed quiet, you used my silence as proof that your version was true. I was trying to save my son. I'm your daughter. You don't understand what it's like to be a mother." "No, but I understand what it's like to be sacrificed by one." Her face hardened. "That is a cruel thing to say." It was cruel to do. We sat in silence. Ruth was in the next room, not because she was listening but because she had made it clear she wouldn't be used as an excuse for another private ambush. My mother eventually stood. "I hope being right was worth losing your family." I didn't stand with her. "I lost the role you assigned me. I'm still here for anyone willing to know me without it." She left. For a long time after, I stared at the closed door. I had wanted recognition from her for most of my life. Not praise. Just one honest sentence. Bella helped. Bella paid. Bella showed up. Bella didn't deserve what we said about her. I didn't get that sentence. What I got was something less comforting and more useful. Proof that waiting for it had kept me trapped. Tara and I are closer now, though not in a dramatic best friends after the scandal way. She checks facts before carrying messages. When my mother starts rewriting the vow renewal, Tara says, "That is not what happened. I was there." Glenn still dislikes conflict. He probably always will. But he stopped calling silence peace. When Raymond complained that the family had turned against him, Glenn said, "No. People learned information you did not want them to have." Ruth remains in her home. We added another rail near the back steps, replaced a loose section of flooring, and arranged more regular help. Every payment is documented. Every large expense is approved in writing. She complains that the bank alerts are annoying, which I consider a good problem. Jason continues making payments. Slowly. Resentfully. Reliably enough that Ruth has not taken further action. Raymond no longer speaks to me unless a message is necessary. My mother sends holiday cards but does not call. The cards are signed Love, Mom and Raymond, as if handwriting can settle what conversation could not. I keep them in a drawer for a while, then throw them away. The white envelope of receipts is no longer in my kitchen. I move the important records into a secure file with the rest of Ruth's documents. The old pharmacy slips and duplicate confirmations that no longer serve a purpose went through a shredder. I thought letting them go would feel sentimental. It felt administrative. The last time someone called me ungrateful was at a family lunch nearly a year after the vow renewal. It was an aunt who hadn't attended and had only heard my mother's newest version. She said, "Whatever happened, your mother gave you a lot." I looked at her and said, "Then she can tell that story without lying about what I gave." She changed the subject. That is the boundary now. My mother is allowed to have feelings. Raymond is allowed to dislike me. Jason is allowed to resent paying back money he should never have taken. They are not allowed to purchase their comfort with my name. I didn't walk out of that vow renewal with everyone's approval. I walked out with my name back. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.